You're listening to The Flickcast, a pop culture podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and joining me, as he usually does, and I am happy for it, Joe Dilworth. Hello, Joe. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I am still doing well on Arrakis. I'm
Nice.
reporting recording this remotely from Arrakis, and things are still going well. The spice is still flowing. The worms are huge and still
Excellent.
feisty. So it's all good. It's all
The
good.
worms are feisty,
Yes.
so that's good. That's really good. And no sand in your bikini area,
Oh
I hope.
no, that's always prevalent, but you can get used to it. It's like a warm blanket at this point, so it's all good.
It's a warm blanket at this
Yes.
point. Yeah, I can imagine that's an ongoing problem on Arrakis, I would
I
think.
would think
Sand
so. I mean, it's bad enough when
everywhere.
you go to the beach, but can you imagine if it's a planet of sand? Yeah, forget about
Well,
it.
there's no way to escape it, right? It's just everywhere.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as they point out many times in the book, we're talking about Dune, of course. As they point out many times in the book, and they pointed out in the David Lynch movie, and it's like the spice is everywhere. It permeates everything, and you can't get away from it. So basically, everyone on Dune is like always high, which is interesting. So
I would imagine like a cleaning service or even a service that focused on dusting would make serious bank on Arrakis. I'm just
well,
saying.
it's got to be different than Caladan, right? You
Yeah.
know, I should before we get deep into this Dune stuff, I should say you can find the Flickcast at Apple Podcast, at Spotify, and at Stitcher, and all the other places you find podcasts. You can find it online at the Flickcast, and you can find Joe at What Joe Writes, and me at Chris U. And also we have Patreon if you wanted to throw the show a few bucks.
Yeah.
It's patreon.com/the Flickcast. As Joe has pointed out before, and I pointed out before, the money goes basically back to the show. It doesn't go into our pockets because we're
No.
not getting rich from this. It's just fun. It's a fun thing that we do. It's a fun service that we provide. Like I'll
Yes.
watch movies that no one will or whatever, and I'll talk about them here and save you the trouble, and so will Joe. But anyway, back to Dune. We did talk about Dune a lot last week because there was a Dune trailer, and I did say a couple things I think that were wrong, which
What?
happened. I know, which happens sometimes. But it's knowing the Dune universe. I hadn't really explored it, but luckily I pulled out my Dune encyclopedia, so I was able to look up stuff. And I've also been listening to a really cool Dune podcast, which I'll give a shout out to. It's the Gom Jabbar podcast
Ooh, I'll have to check
at the
that out.
Lore Podcast Network. Those guys know. I know a lot about Dune. I mean, all evidence to the contrary last week, but I feel like I know quite a bit about Dune, and these guys know even way more than that. So it's very informative. I liked it very much. I'm listening to it now. So anyway, you were saying, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Was I? I was just
Or maybe
sorry.
it was me. I don't remember.
I
Well,
was
someone was
cleaning
talking.
sand out, but you said that you needed to make some corrections. Here's the thing, though. I'm going to say this quick, in case I don't want our talk last episode, or as much as we're going to delve into it this episode, to dissuade anyone or make them feel intimidated about seeing Dune, because I'm positive you can go into the movie without knowing anything about Dune, and,
Oh, yeah,
and you'll be
absolutely,
fine.
absolutely.
I hope, though, much like it is with me, it inspires people to, like, they should have a little thing at the end. Would you like to know more? And show you where you can get the books and all that. So because there's like about 85 books at this point, so there's plenty of material to read about. So it's great.
No, you're absolutely right. And you can't make a giant blockbuster movie at $250 million, or whatever it costs, and expect, well, first you have to do your homework before you come and see the movie. You have to have read all these books and the extra
Yes.
source material to
Yes.
understand. No, it has to be standalone, right?
Right.
It has to be a self-contained story. That's why it's based on the novel by Frank Herbert. It's not a literal translation of the book or interpretation of the book, because first of all, the book is like 500 pages or whatever, 800 pages. But you can't possibly fit it all
Sure.
in,
Sure.
even in two movies. So it's going to be, here's the gist of it. But yeah, you have to understand just watching the movie, and hopefully, like you said, hopefully it'll get people to go back
Yeah.
and dive into the book. But it is a mouthful, or a brainful, or it's a lot.
It's a
It's a
rich,
lot.
rich universe, which is
It is.
it's
And
great.
even just the first one is a rich universe, but there's several more, as you pointed out. Like the first four, the ones written by Frank Herbert specifically, are
Yes.
kind of the ones that I tell people, like we talked about last week. They're kind of the ones I say, you should read those, and then if you really, really, really feel compelled, you can go on to the other ones. But I never found those to be. I don't want to be rude, but not as compelling. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, so here's my question, and we can get into your retractions. But and then maybe I asked this last week and I don't remember. So there's Dune, and then, like you said, there's three more books that Frank Herbert wrote. Is it like a full story, or is it like he wrote Dune and then he was like, well, I could probably tell some more stories about this since it's making money, and launched into another story, or is each book a contained story? How does it work?
Well, it's both. They're both. Dune is a contained story, and then the next book it follows Paul quite a bit, and then it sort of transitions in some ways because it takes place over a long period of time.
Right.
Like the thing that one of the things I was talking about last week is the time frame of Dune, and literally getting out my Dune encyclopedia, which is a real book actually. Mine was published right around the time the movie came out in 1984, the David Lynch movie. So I was flipping through that, and then also listening to this podcast I was talking about reminded me that there's a lot of things that happened in the history of Dune before the Atreides story, before Paul's even born, and this whole thing happens. So there's like 30,000 years in the future, basically.
Right.
Although it only says like in the David Lynch movie, it says it's 10,000 whatever, but that's after the Spacing Guild was formed. Right. So it's like, this is super nerdy now. I realize. Sorry, folks, but and so. They learn how to fold space and learn how to travel. The Spacing Guild comes into existence in the Bene Gesserit and everything. But before that was a whole bunch of other stuff. And then there's this whole thing about the war against artificial intelligence, which is why you have mentats. Anyway, it's just a really rich, super rich history. And if you can find a copy of the Dune Encyclopedia, it's an amazing book. If it gives you more information than you can ever want. It's not written by Frank Herbert, but it's the guy who researched it and compiled it. It's a bunch of people who researched it and compiled it, and he did a foreword for the book when it first came out, so it was sort of tacitly endorsed. Over the years now, the Herbert estate has kind of distanced themselves from it, but it's less canon than it used to be. But I still think it's
well,
cool.
Frank liked it, so that's good enough for me.
He did, yeah, it's good enough for me, and I call him Frank too. So.
Of course, yeah, I still call him Frank. I mean, we hung out.
So I don't. Honestly, I can't remember. I know for a fact though that I said a couple of things last week that I know were like either totally not correct or sort of somewhat incorrect. So I can't really retract them because I can't remember what they are. I should have written it down, but so I apologize if you were like, oh, I don't think that's right, because we try to be a good source of information for things, but we're not always perfect about it. So.
Well, yeah, we're fallible. We're human. You know.
Yeah, I just haven't read the book in a while, and I haven't seen the movies in a while, and I haven't obviously I've never seen Denis Villeneuve's movie,
right?
Although it looks pretty killer.
It's coming out soon, though. I can't wait.
Coming soon, yeah. So I wonder if he'll end up suing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll get to the
yes.
We'll get to the lawsuits, and we'll get to the other stuff in a minute. But we should talk about. We're going to talk more about Dune. Obviously, it's going to come up a lot.
So what do you need to retract from last week?
Well, as I was saying, I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
I just know that during the episode last week, I said, oh, this was this or something, and I was either wrong or sort of wrong, or
that's okay.
But again, based on my knowledge at the moment, but then upon reflection and refreshing my knowledge, then I realized, oh, I think that was wrong. But I can't necessarily put my finger on it. The one thing that I said already was the time frame of Dune, because again, there's a huge history of things that happens. I mean, like, they don't even talk about it in the movie, but like, or in the book even, Earth is like destroyed by an asteroid, which basically means that humans have to expand into the galaxy, and then they turn Earth into a park.
Oh, interesting.
Which is kind of cool.
But that's not in the book?
They don't really talk about what happened, because you're just basically set down in this world, and it's all humans, but it's like, well, no one ever talks about Earth. No one ever talks about history, right?
Right.
They never talk about their shared history of anything. And in many ways, Herbert gets around that brilliantly by saying, well, the Earth was basically destroyed almost and then turned into a park. And so humans are scattered all over the galaxy, so they don't necessarily know their shared history of what it was like on Earth. They don't know about, Star Trek, or they don't know about, there's no pop culture references or anything.
Right.
Because they don't really have that, because that all was destroyed. And then, of course, all the computers were basically destroyed in the AI war, the Butlerian Jihad, they call it. Just a quick story about the Jihad. It's interesting because basically what started the Jihad was this woman who went to the hospital because she was pregnant, and the AI who ran the hospital decided that her baby would be have problems when it was born. So the AI decided to abort the baby.
Oh, I see.
So, but she didn't know that the hospital was run by artificial intelligence. She thought it was people, because there were people there too. But the AI apparently made the ultimate decision to get rid of the child. And so she was pissed. And so pissed, in fact, that her and her husband, who apparently were kind of high up in the caste, in the government or whatever, decided to, we're going to eradicate all artificial intelligence on this planet. And so they started the Butlerian Jihad. Her name was Jeannie Butler or Jane Butler. I can't remember her first name. Jahan? Oh, it was Jahan Butler. That was it. And so they go on this crusade and they team up with these other people like, yeah, computers are bad. So they go all over the galaxy destroying all the computers, basically.
I see. So that's why we have no computers.
That's why there's no computers. Yeah. They destroy, all the artificial intelligence, all the whatever. So now another guy comes up with the idea of mentats. And then, you have these other guys who, because that's why there's no machines really. That's why there's no anything. It's because this computer decided to kill this woman's baby and she did not appreciate that.
Okay. Well,
a little
right.
aside,
No,
which
cool.
which you don't get in the book. They talk about the Butlerian Jihad in the book, and they talk about why there's no,
So where
no machines.
do you get that information? Is it just in the encyclopedia, or is it
this information I'm talking about?
Yeah, the whole thing?
Well, there's a
said.
huge history. Yeah, there's a whole history of the Butlerian Jihad in this encyclopedia.
Okay,
yeah. I mean, you can find it online now too, but Herbert never really spelled it out that much. I mean, he talks about it a little bit more in the subsequent books, but you're kind of left to your imagination in a way. But again, that's why you get mentats, because they're humans who have advanced their brains so much that they can think and they can computate and they can make predictions, and they get so good at making predictions with data points that they can actually almost predict the future because they know what's going to happen. Which is why it's interesting what happens with Thufir in Dune. And again, this is really deep stuff. I apologize. That he it's interesting that he makes so many mistakes in Dune, because he's supposed to be able to predict the future, but it's because people do really extraordinarily random things. Jessica decides to give birth to a boy. She's not supposed to do that, but he didn't, because in his life, the Bene Gesserit do what they're told, basically.
Right. And she's like, no.
No, it's all because of love, man. So anyway, that's just, we could get a huge deep dive into Dune, and we probably will, but that's just like part of it. It's such a rich world, and I kind of forgot about that a little bit.
Well, now I need to really read the books, because
getting back into the book and then getting back into the the audiobook was helpful, but getting back into the encyclopedia and stuff. I mean, there's like 20 pages about just the Butlerian Jihad. It's like there's so much shit. This book, I'm holding it in my hand. You can't see it because this is a podcast.
funny how that works.
Funny, yeah. If you could see it, you'd know that it's about 500 pages.
Jeez.
Of extra material just about Dune and the universe of Dune. So
I'm a huge fan of technical manuals and encyclopedias and reference books for things that don't exist. So I'm surprised I don't have this.
I'm a nerd. I have the Starfleet technical manuals, I know, and the blueprints and all that shit. I have all that stuff still.
Yeah, I have those, and like any kind of like travel. There's a series of travel books like for Vulcan and stuff like that. That
nice
is really cool, and anything like that, technical manuals and encyclopedias. I'm just like a sucker for that stuff, because it's like, this is really cool. So
yeah, but again, what really sort of kindled or sparked this interest again? I'm glad I have this book, but excuse me, sorry about that. What really sparked my interest was the movie coming out and everything, and then listening to the audiobook recently. But also, I mean, I'll give a shout out where it's due. Listening to that Gom Jabbar podcast has been really cool. So
nice.
Like I said, they know a lot about Dune, and I really appreciate that. I mean, I don't know if it's perfect for someone who's never read the book necessarily, because they do get into a lot of spoiler stuff, especially for what happens to the Atreides and what happens in the book of Dune, because they actually are reading the book now and going through it, like book reporting it almost.
Right.
So I don't know if that's right. Maybe you want to save that until the movie. I don't know. Like you said, maybe you'll watch the movie first and then read the book after. I don't
know. I think I know the story well enough, at least the basics from what I've seen, the movie and the miniseries and stuff. I almost want, I say.
Oh yeah, you saw the David Lynch movie in the miniseries. Yeah, okay.
I mean, so I know what the story is about, but again, as we discussed pre-show, I don't really. I have this block on reading right now, so I'm going to say, you know what? I think I'll actually read the book before the movie, and that's not going to happen. So I will read it at some point, I hope, because.
Well, again, like I said, the audiobook is also awesome too. So
yeah. So
I don't own a stake in Audible, but sometimes, even though it's a monopoly, Audible still has some good stuff.
Exactly.
So.
Yes.
I hate to say that, but it's true. I wish there were other options, but
Audible is
kind of
It's
kind of. I mean, there are other options. There are definitely other places you can get audio books, but it's kind of Audible is kind of like the best place. and I subscribe to it.
Yeah.
And you get your credits every month, and you just download stuff, and you're in the whole Amazon ecosystem. But the nice thing is you can also borrow books from Amazon and then return them, which is kind of cool too.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway,
you can get, just to give a shout out, you can get audiobooks at most libraries nowadays. So
that's true. It's a different app, but you absolutely can. You know what else you can do at libraries? You can check out actual physical books.
You can go to the library and check out audiobooks on CD and also physical books. Most library systems, like the one that we go to here, has an app where you can check out digital books and audio.
That's nice.
The cool thing too, my local library, you can also check out musical instruments. Like I could go and check out a theremin from my library, and I find that extremely cool.
That is cool. I'm surprised. I mean, I would be surprised if you can't do that in Austin too, because Austin's a big musical town. So I imagine you can. Although I've never tried, but I would bet that's an option. But art library is amazing. You know what we should do on this show sometime is we should talk about books, because we don't talk about books enough.
We should.
We're talking about talking about Dune a lot, and your favorite actor, his book, Seth Rogen's book too. I talked about that. So.
There are some books coming up that I definitely want to read, and we're going to make every effort to read. So yeah, we should talk about books some more.
Yeah, you should read the guy who did The Martian. You should read his book too, Project Hail Mary. Or did you already read that? You said.
No, I haven't read it yet. I have it. I bought it. I have bought a lot of books I haven't read, which is sad.
Project Hail Mary is good. I like.
Yeah, I need to read that.
Anyway, speaking of nostalgia, we're talking about stuff that happened long ago. In fact, in the 80s, funnily enough,
in the 1900s, as my kids say.
Back in the day when I was younger, a new trailer for Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yeah,
just dropped recently, and I gotta say, it got me in the feels, as they say.
Yes, it did.
It was. I watched it more than once, and I was like, "Wow, you know what? This is pretty cool." And as a Ghostbusters nerd, I was pretty excited to see that sort of whatever you want to call it at the end of the trailer too. That was kind of cool. So I know who that is. So.
It definitely. As far as I'm concerned, did its job, and I'm like, yeah. Well, let's face it, I was going to see this anyway. But if I was I was on the fence, this trailer would have sold me. I mean, we got Annie Potts in the trailers.
Well, okay. Let's talk about the Annie Potts thing. Let's talk about the trailer for a minute. So, you basically open on these kids. They're going back to a small town in Oklahoma, I think it is,
to their grandfather's house.
In the animated series, where Egon basically says he's from there,
right?
If you recall, I mean, I don't know if you watched the Ghostbusters animated
series,
but I did.
Yes. Yeah.
And so he talks about that's his hometown, and so they go back there, and then this is apparently Egon's daughter, sitting with Paul Rudd, who his character I think is the local science teacher or something.
Yes.
They don't really get into it too much. Anyway, so and then he has grandkids. One of them, the girl looks exactly like Egon, basically with the glasses and everything. It's great casting. And then you have Finn Wolfhard, of course. So it's like Stranger Things mixes in here,
exactly,
which is fine. Why not?
Yeah.
It's a great person to put in this movie because it basically fits in exactly with what's. I mean, there could be, ironically, remember in Stranger Things they wore Ghostbusters outfits as their costumes.
Yep.
And now he is a Ghostbuster. Hello. And then Annie Potts shows up and talks about how he could never keep the power on, which is of course a joke about they used to blow the power grid back in New York with the containment thing. But anyway. So what was the relationship between Egon and...
Exactly. That's exactly what my wife and I were talking about.
If they get together, then that's her mom, right?
Right. So...
Is that her mom?
Maybe.
I don't know, because she's got to talk about how he could never keep the power. I mean, it's like she's telling him about her dad.
Right.
So my feeling is that that's not her mom.
I don't know, because the conversation seemed to be more... I don't know. It's... obviously we'll find out, but it just seemed like it was more than just like, I mean, why else would Janine be there? I don't know, but
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
Right. It just seemed like she was kind of saying, this is how your dad was like.
Because she was available? No, I don't know. I'm sorry, that's terrible. I think that either A, she was his girlfriend or wife or whatever, but you would think that this woman would recognize her own mother. The conversation seemed more casual than that. It didn't seem like a mother-daughter kind of conversation, at least from the clips that we got. So either she was not there and he was with somebody else, or maybe she came to take care of him towards the end or whatever, and she was with him at the end of his life and was taking care of him and loving him, and
or maybe
they got back together.
The house. He left the house to her. So I don't know who. Yeah.
No, he left the house to the daughter.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
So
yeah,
I don't know. It's cool. It was cool to see her, and we'll find out more, obviously. And then of course the grandchild, she finds the containment thing, like hidden in the floorboards under a puzzle. It's like, why is that there? Because it's supposed to be, is that where Slimer is? I don't know, maybe, but I don't know. But it's just so much nostalgia. And then of course Paul Rudd's at the store, and it's little tiny, it's little Stay Puft Marshmallow.
Yeah, that was pretty great, and all their little making s'mores out of each other and stuff like that. Was great.
Yeah, what a warm blanket of chocolate. It's like, what a wonderful thing. But it's just so funny. And then you get the they find the Ecto-1, and he's like joyriding the Ecto-1, and
they see the old commercials, so they can get the phone number.
Well, yeah, she wants to find more about her grandfather, and so she's looking at the YouTubes.
Yes,
and it's funny to see like some of the other videos they're showing on the side too, because how YouTube suggests other videos. Some of the other ones are pretty funny. Ghostbusters, where are they now? That kind of stuff.
Yes.
And then of course something's going on. Why is there earthquakes here in a town with no fault lines?
It's the apocalypse. Yeah,
it is the apocalypse. And as you're watching, and they're in that underground thing, and something's coming out of that pit. Do you see the mohawk? Do you see the hair?
I do.
It's Gozer.
Yes,
the Gozerian.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, if you're gonna do a follow up to the original movies, you're not gonna have Vigo show up again as Gozer, right? That's their first.
Vigo.
Vigo.
Yeah, it's Vigo. No, it's Gozer, because you can tell by the hair, and it's like the color is right, and the statues on the side are the dogs basically, but they're standing up.
Well, isn't that one of the dogs that comes out of the Best Buy analog after Paul Rudd? So
yes.
Yep. So Gozer's back.
Yeah. Gozer's back, baby.
No, that was a great trailer. I just.
But yeah, my speculation is that either Egon moves there because he's retired or whatever, or he moves there because that's the most concentrated amount of spectral turbulence, or he's there to keep Gozer in check.
Yeah, and
right?
something
happens.
Yeah, either Gozer arranges for him to die, or he just dies of natural causes. But now it's like, hey, I need to leave this to my daughter and my grandkids, so that someone is here
to carry on the work that we're doing where it's contained. They're never going to show Harold Ramis's death scene or anything like that. No, it's never going to happen.
No.
So I would guess that Annie Potts shows up to tell the story about why you got the house. You need to carry on the tradition. You need to the next generation or whatever. I would bet that's part of it. She's just there to sort of help spear them on, but the kids have to be the future, right? They have to be the future of ghost busting because it makes them feel good. That's a strange thing to say, but they seem to take to it pretty well. You get like an Ecto-1 chase scene. You get the whole thing. It's so many. It looks great, and I only hope that they can maintain it. You know what I mean? It's like this is amazing. This looks really cool, and will the movie be as good? I hope so. I don't know, but.
I think so. I mean,
they set a high bar, I think.
I think Jason Reitman is a good director. I mean, following on from his dad, and Gil Kennan is one of the writers with Jason Reitman for this, and he knows how to construct a fairly decent story. So I think it'll be all right.
Yeah, well, I think that they were more likely to get the cooperation of the other actors from the original if this is sort of a Reitman kind of deal. Even though Bill Murray said, I'll do Ghostbusters over my dead body or whatever kind of thing.
Well, I think
they don't show him in the trailer, but they do show
they show him in the flashback videos and the commercials. But
they do, and if that's his only involvement, that's fine. But those are stuff I feel like because there's I don't know if there's pictures of him on the set, but he definitely talks about being on set and wearing a proton pack.
Oh no! I think
how it was so heavy.
They've been fairly clear about this, that they all appear in the present day, that they all have a part in the story. I think that was one of the things early on. Is like, is there just going to be like hey, look, there's Bill Murray cameo, and they're like, no, they're actually involved in the story. They're part of it. So. And Bill Murray actually made a comment that he said he read the script and it was really good. It had a lot of emotion. It had a lot of family in it, and the through lines from the previous movies are very, very interesting. So I think they're more than just flashback videos and stuff. I think they actually will
Good.
probably have a stake in it and a part in whatever the finale is, or the
Well,
ending.
they do call for help.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think it is going to be more than just.
Yeah, and they got to get the band back together.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously minus one person, but and they did show the picture with Winston too. So obviously Ernie Hudson will be back too.
Well, he's listed in the credits, so I mean, they're all everybody is. Sigourney Weaver's coming back. I think everybody, but
Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis is not.
Maybe that'll be the surprise cameo.
Maybe. I mean, we did get him in a cameo in a commercial, for God's sake. So
Louis Tully will be the right hand of Gozer. Right?
So I mean that brings up did the Tully and Janine not ever end up together? Did she end up with Egon? How did that work out? So
well, that's interesting that you say that, because they kind of seemed like they were destined to be together, because they were the biggest nerds in the movie, which is hard to believe considering you have all these other giant nerds in the movie. But so yeah, I mean, Egon and Janine had a flirty relationship, but they never. I don't know. I got the feeling that Egon was like not interested in girls at that point, and maybe he was just interested in science, because she's like, I also play racquetball. I love that line.
I don't know. He was under her desk and seemed to have a smile on his face when he came out from under it. Just saying.
Well, he found a slime or something, but no.
Wow.
No disrespect to Annie Potts.
Wow.
I'm just saying, man. You go on your mucus. I'm just saying. Is that wrong?
Yeah, that's pretty wrong.
That's a lot. That's a line in the movie.
Yes, I know, but that's
it's just funny. No human being would stack books that way. It's just like there's so many throwaway lines, and a lot of them are Bill Murray. Like he does the piano thing. It's like they hate that.
Yeah. So
Oh, man.
just
So
looking
many
at a
good
couple
lines in
things
Ghostbusters.
quick. People were like, "So is this going to be like the original people back, like the cameos they had in the 2016 Ghostbusters?" And apparently, it's like, no. They're actually part of the story, and they're their characters, and it's.
Well, the 2016 Ghostbusters isn't canon.
I know, but it's like
this is basically the third movie of the Ghostbusters trilogy.
They all, except for Bill Murray, had very like quick cameos, and they're like, no, it's not going to be like that. They're actually part of the story, and they'll be involved.
Yeah.
Well,
they'll come in at the end, right? Because the kids are in over their heads. They need to pass the torch. So the old guard.
They'll come in and train them, and then they'll help them fight Gozer. At
maybe,
the end.
or they'll sacrifice themselves to help, because they'll cross the streams. There'll be some stream crossing at some point. There will be.
Yeah, exactly. There will be. Don't cross the streams except when you need to.
Except when you need to. Yeah, exactly. It's like rules are made to be broken, right?
Exactly.
He said, "Don't cross the streams." He's like, "Trust me," and they'll be.
The flowers are still standing. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But then, of course, at the end, they call, and you can, as the camera tilts down, you see a cult in the window, and of course it's Ray. In his cult bookstore where he's answering the phone. We're closed. I mean, obviously that's Dan Aykroyd's voice. People are like, "Oh, that's Bill Murray." Like, no, it's not Bill Murray.
It was Dan Aykroyd. Come on.
Dan Aykroyd. You can't see his Revelation 7:12 tattoo.
Right. Exactly.
I'm just saying.
Come on. So no,
I got too deep in that, but it literally is a Revelation 7:12 tattoo.
Exactly. I'm really excited for this, and I'm glad it's finally coming out in Thanksgiving, which it's too bad they couldn't release it for Halloween, but that's all right, I guess.
Yeah, why can't they?
I know, but
I don't know. Well, hopefully not only in theaters. I hate to say that, but
I think it is going to be only in theaters, but
with the Delta variant, let's take this conversation down a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
With the Delta variant out there, who knows? But I will see it not in theaters,
right?
But I will see it as soon as I possibly can, because I'm in. You know what? I don't even care in some ways what it's about or who's in it or what anything, because I tried to like the other Ghostbusters movie, and I liked all the cast members. I sort of liked the story, but it was made by people I don't think who either didn't really have a feel for. It felt like a cash grab to me, the whole thing. It felt like disingenuous. Even though I love all the cast,
I liked it, and if you were going to reboot it, I think that was a great way to go.
It was okay,
but I think they went I don't want to say too far on the humor, but it was kind of like somebody had seen Ghostbusters and was like, I have a take on that, and it was their idea. But I don't know if I'm describing that right, but it was like someone else's. Uh, I was like, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It was like 6 degrees
Yeah.
away from a Ghostbusters movie. I liked it, and I thought it was really good, especially the extended cut, because I think there was some good character parts that were pulled out for the theatrical one.
Yeah.
But this having the endorsement of the originals, and especially Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, who had a hand in the story of the first movie, and being directed by Jason Reitman, who is Ivan Reitman's son, obviously, and produced by Ivan Reitman. I feel like this is like kind of insider baseball. It's made by the people that did the original. So, who knows Ghostbusters and how to make a Ghostbusters movie better than these folks, right? So,
Well, Dan Aykroyd knows Ghostbusters pretty well because he wrote Ghostbusters with Harold
yeah,
Ramis. So it's like
exactly.
they kind of know. And Ivan Reitman, yeah, I mean, they know the ins and outs of all. And so, who better
Yeah.
to sort of be involved? And why Ivan Reitman didn't direct this, I don't know, but maybe he's just not into directing as much anymore.
Yeah, I think he's pretty old at this point, and I
I mean,
think
he's not that old. He's 74. He's not
yeah,
that old. But no, it makes sense. You get the young blood in there, and you get the young kids in there. I mean, obviously, they're trying to not to be cynical, but they're trying to launch a new franchise. I'm sure.
sure.
And that Finn Wolfhard guy, he's popular with the girls, and so
Yeah,
you
he's
know,
been in
and
some things that people have
who
watched.
honestly, who better to put in it than the kid from Stranger Things? I mean, it's like it's a
Right,
no brainer. It's
right,
basically Stranger Things owes a lot to Ghostbusters,
absolutely.
and other things like Ghostbusters, but it's like it makes perfect sense. So just jump in there and have the kids come along, and you need the guys to come and
Yeah,
sort of spearhead the new generation, and we'll be there if you need us. Give us a call. You got the number. We're ready to believe you, or something. That'll be the end, right?
yeah. They're like, hey, if this happens again,
Give us a call.
yeah,
Yeah.
who are you gonna call?
And they see,
See,
there you go. That's good.
yeah,
So they'll go off in their separate ways. But I don't think you'll get Bill Murray back again. But you don't need to at this point, because
no,
the idea that you'll just who I want to see in this is William Atherton.
ah,
There
yes,
needs to be an EPA guy in this one. I'm sorry.
that would be. Yeah, he's not listed, but he could still make a
No,
cameo.
I
Maybe
loved
there's
him. He
like
was fine.
some news story about him being, arrested for embezzling or something like
No,
that.
he'll be watching it on the news. It's like, oh man,
Yeah,
not again.
he'll start
No, I don't read
having.
that.
Well, yeah, it'll be a news report, especially if Gozer coming back, and one of the Stay Puff Marshmallow guys will run across the screen, and he'll be like, ah.
Yeah, right. He'll have like some, because the last time we saw him, he was covered in marshmallows. So he like hates
Exactly,
marshmallows now, right?
exactly. Come on, they've
So
got to
no,
do that. I have a feeling they won't, but
they won't at all. But
yeah,
that'll be in the extended cut. Maybe he'll
yeah,
just have a cameo. But
yeah.
I think that yeah, I'm just
I think it looks great.
I'm a person who likes. I don't mind nostalgia. I don't mind thinking about the past, and I certainly don't mind things having through lines, as you said, from movies that I loved in my youth. And sometimes it works out great, and sometimes it doesn't. Like with some of the Star Wars movies, it's a disappointment. But then Mandalorian comes along and helps you and whatever. So as much as I like the other Ghostbusters movie, the woke version, as the critics say,
Yeah,
it didn't feel the same to me. And perhaps if I'd never seen it in the other ones, or it didn't mean as much to me when I was growing up, that it wouldn't have mattered as much. And that's
yeah,
fine. I know what
yeah.
they were trying to do. This feels like an actual Ghostbusters movie to me, and it will appeal to my nostalgia, but also I think it will serve as a launching point for people who are just getting into the franchise, who've watched Stranger Things, or who are younger, like, oh, this is cool. It's fun to fight ghosts,
Right.
and whatever. So I think that it's going to serve a dual purpose, and I hope it's hugely successful. And I would like to see more Ghostbusters movies. I have no problem with that. But this doesn't. I guess what I'm saying is this doesn't feel like we want to make this for money.
Right.
I feel like there's some, and I hate to use this word, but I feel like there's some love and like reverence for the sort of material that they started with. I mean, again, it's just a movie about fighting ghosts. It's not like War and Peace or something, but they obviously care about it, and I think Reitman cares about it a lot more than Paul Feig did, or Feig.
Yeah, I think I do like the 2016 one, and I'm kind of I am actually a little disappointed that we didn't get another movie with them. I would have totally watched that,
Well,
but
it failed.
but I think in a lot of ways it was trying too hard to not be subversive, but kind of parody and satirize the original while still trying to do a movie. And I think that's kind of where they went in the wrong direction. If it had been a more, I don't know, I don't want to say a more true remake, but if it had,
How dare you?
I mean, even like the first two movies had their moments of like seriousness and grounded, and I don't feel like that 2016 one did. It was just like trying to be funny all the way through. And I think this one gets back to that original premise. It's like, hey, here's normal in the real world, but there's this supernatural stuff happening, and who are you going to call? And I think it's very smart that they have Paul Rudd in the lead, because he delivers and he does well. And I think they're rightly focusing on, you know, the kids and these other characters. And yes, we'll bring in the originals, but if it was, I don't think it would work as well if it was like Ghostbusters 40 years later, right? And it was just like, you know, it starts out with Bill Murray waking up cranky, and it's like, I don't know that.
Yeah, they're all like half drunk and fat and like,
I don't think that would work as well.
Yeah, they got to drag their asses to the same Ecto-1 that they've been, you know, fighting ghosts with for 40 years, and they're just like, everyone has 3 mortgages for everything. You know?
And I noticed, I'm thinking there's a little bit of a meta context there too, because Paul Rudd's character is a fan of the Ghostbusters in the universe, and has always wondered what happened to him, and was like, you know, it would be great to see him again, kind of thing. So he's like us. He's the super fans that have been waiting for this for years, and so I like that little throughput. But yeah, no, I think it's just the tone of it just looks right, and I think it'll be
well. And
really
also,
good.
it as you know, it's. He's going to serve as sort of the surrogate father figure. He's going to be the guy who helps. He's obviously going to be important to the story. He's going to be with the mom.
He and the mom get together at the end, obviously, right?
Yeah, of course. And he'll be, you know, and then they'll all become Ghostbusters together. The whole family of Ghostbusters, probably.
Yes.
So, but yeah, he'll get his dream to become a Ghostbuster. He'll be like, oh my god, I've dreamed of this so much.
He'll be the Tully in the second one.
Back to the Future, but total bullshit. No, that's a different movie. But
yes.
Yeah. Someone commented, I can't remember who it was, but I was watching something and they were talking about how Paul Rudd finally looks like he's aged a bit.
Slightly. I mean, he's still.
And I'm watching the trailer. I'm like, yeah, he looks like he's in his 40s now.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
He's had a hard life. He's been, you know, he's Ant-Man. He's whatever. And
it's
like now he's finally aging a little. Poor Paul.
Oh, poor Paul.
Yeah, I think that Jason Reitman's a great choice. I mean, not the only choice, but pretty much kind of the only choice who could kind of carry on the torch. I mean, if you look at it, Ivan Reitman passed the torch to his son.
Right.
Jason is passing the torch from the original Ghostbusters to the new generation.
Yeah.
It all makes sense. Sometimes things just come together like they're supposed to, right?
Yes.
And this looks like it's one of those times where hopefully things are coming together like they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, Juno, I really enjoyed that. Up in the Air, you know, Jason has done a lot of.
Yeah, he's a good filmmaker.
Even Thank You for Smoking, which I think is funny. If you ever watched that,
yes.
But anyway,
looking forward.
That is the Ghostbusters trailer. Looking forward. Yeah, you can tell we're looking forward to it, right?
Yeah.
Kids.
Kids.
You know, if you don't understand, well, I mean, young people don't understand nostalgia, right? Because they've never had things in their past. So it has to be a movie. Like we were just talking about with Dune, it has to be a movie that people are going to go, which is why they did the trailer like this, right? It has to be a movie that's going to appeal to new audiences.
Yeah.
What is this movie about ghost busting? That's weird. That looks cool. And it's got these kids. It got the kid from Stranger Things. It got this. Excuse me. And so it's got to bring in the new audience. And so I feel like there'll be another trailer, which I don't know. They're not going to give away. They're not going to show Bill Murray in the trailer, and they probably won't show any more of Dan Aykroyd either.
No, I think that's all we're going to get.
In case there was a question, it's Dan Aykroyd at the end, right? We said
yes.
Okay.
Well,
And they won't show. They probably won't show Winston. They probably won't show Sigourney Weaver. They probably won't show.
No.
There is no Dana, only Zool.
Yes.
They probably won't show. I mean, I wonder I wonder if you'll see Bill Murray's character and Dana like got together and they're like married with some kids like out in the Poconos, or I don't know where people live in New York. I'm sorry, but
the Poconos.
The Poconos where people go. They go there for vacation.
That's vacation, yeah. But no.
There,
I mean, to your point, this has to be. You got to know that. I mean, it's a sequel to a 40-year-old movie. You can't.
Yeah.
You got to know that the majority, not maybe the majority, but a good portion of your audience has never seen Ghostbusters before. So you have to make it accessible to them, and it can't all be about, nostalgia and, it can't be built on things that only longtime fans will get, because then it'll completely fail the box office and we won't get any more. And then all the critics will be like, oh, it's just a money grab. But you have to do a solid story, and you can fold in the originals from. I mean, they already did that in the trailer, like you said. And the actual original commercials from that they did in the first movie are there, and it's like, so that's enough for people to go, oh, so what's this about? And they'll explain it. I'm sure Paul Rudd's character will have a nice exposition moment where he wax poetic about the the Ghostbusters and what they meant. You don't know what they mean. You don't know
who these guys are. You don't know what they did.
Yeah, you sounded just like him right there. That was excellent.
Yeah,
good impression.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and he'll have to explain it to the kids probably too. You don't know who your grandfather is?
Yeah, they saved the world, and nobody
saved the world.
Everybody's forgotten it, and it's plausible 40 years on, since it only happened in New York, right? Even both of them, it's like 40 years later. I mean, it's kind of
people forget.
Yeah, so
people forget what happened. But what people don't understand is the phenomenal impact and the cultural impact that the movie had too. I mean, the song, Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters song is still played. I mean, the logo with the red thing with the line going through it is still used today for things.
Yeah,
it's still, the cultural impact of Ghostbusters is still out there, and so the fact that, well, as evidenced by the fact they're still making a movie about it right now.
Exactly.
So anyway, it's considered one of the modern blockbusters, right? It's like Star Wars. It's like one of those movies that was like almost a cult movie in a way, because it's kind of a tiny film for a studio film, and the budget was only like $25 million at the time. But it made a phenomenal amount of money. It was hugely successful. It spawned. I mean, I had a Ghostbusters lunchbox.
Right. Exactly.
So it's like, it was a huge deal, and people today don't necessarily realize how big a deal it was, and so. They're gonna learn.
It's for anything to be that ingrained that's not Star Wars is pretty phenomenal. So
right, exactly, and like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, people get that joke, and people get all that stuff. And so what? That's interesting you say that, because I wonder, besides Star Wars, Star Trek is like an enduring thing, maybe
Doctor Who to a certain extent, but I would say that Ghostbusters, Star Wars, and Star Trek are more. Worldwide and global and universal than even Doctor Who. Doctor Who maybe today, but I mean, I quote all the time stuff from the first two movies, and there's always comments that I make when I'm having conversations with people. A lot of times it leads to, what the hell are you talking about? But it's just like, it's one of those things that just pops into my head, kind of like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the first movie. It's just, you can't help but have a retort or a line from either one of those movies to reply with. It's just that. I mean, I can probably quote almost the entire first movie. And it's, I don't know. It was a phenomenon, and it's surprising that we only got two movies from them. But
I've seen it so well. Bill Murray and Harold Ramis fell out. So
that's true. But I've seen it so many times. Yeah,
I've seen Ghostbusters. Yeah, I can't even count how many times. 100 times, maybe. I don't even know. A lot. And I, like you, I could probably quote the entire. We could probably act out the entire movie right now.
Absolutely.
Which we will not do. So,
no,
folks.
No worries.
That'll
be for our patrons.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Patrons can get Joe and I acting out all the parts from Ghostbusters.
Yes,
you are a legitimate phenomenon, Jennifer. Oh, I can't do a Bill Murray. He's too hard. Anyway, so I make jokes like the no human would stack books like that, or listen, do you smell something?
Yeah, listen,
that's like a throwaway line.
Yes.
I say that all the time,
yes.
and my wife's like, oh, what?
Yes.
Although I don't know anyone who hasn't seen Ghostbusters. I'm pretty sure everyone has seen it.
Well, my Melanie and I quote it all the time, and there's quite often where it's where we're like, oh, we should watch something, and she's like, Ghostbusters, and I'm like, let's do it, and we put it on.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I haven't introduced the boy to Ghostbusters yet, but I will. He's like, as long as there's not zombies, I'm fine. Because for some reason we were watching. This is a quick aside, but for some reason we're watching Shaun of the Dead at my friend's house when he was playing with my friend's kid. They were in the kid's room playing Xbox or whatever, and he comes out and we're watching Shaun of the Dead. And I'm like, it's not even that scary.
Yeah.
To me, it's like a parody of zombie movies. And he's like, oh, so he's like freaked out about zombies now for his entire life. So I understand that.
Yeah.
He's 8, so but well, I didn't expect you to come out. We're trying to watch something.
Right.
I didn't think you were going to come out here. You usually never come in. But anyway, that's another important story. It just proves I'm a bad parent, really. What it proves. But talking about Ghostbusters, it's interesting. I think about this sometimes, especially when I watch it. I'm like, what would this movie have been like with John Belushi?
Right.
Because originally, as most people know, as I'm sure you know, Aykroyd wrote the movie to star him and Eddie Murphy and John Belushi.
Right. Yeah.
So what would the movie have been like if that had happened? If Belushi hadn't tragically, killed himself or accidentally killed him? What would have happened? So
though, having said that, I mean,
the movie turned out great, but
I can see a lot of Venkman's, especially in the first movie and early in the first movie, maybe. But I can see a lot of mannerisms from Venkman. I can see how that part was written for Belushi, to be honest. But
it was. But then of course.
And I think Bill Murray came in and put his stamp on it. But I can,
Bill Murray made it his own. He was the king of deadpan. I mean, he was like. You got to wonder how much of Venkman was just Bill Murray being Bill Murray too.
Yeah,
there was probably a lot of
that's probably true.
Yeah, a lot of improvising. I would imagine. I mean, from what I've known of Ivan Reitman's sort of style of directing, it's like he's the kind of guy's like, well, let's try it, like it's in the script, and then you guys do whatever you want. But let's get one like it's on the page.
But I can say that I can see the DNA of Venkman in Belushi's performance in Blues Brothers. To be honest, I mean, Venkman and whichever. Blue that he played is have similarities. They're both very smarmy and very good at kind of the talk show host kind of mentality of talking people into things. So
like the whole scene with him and Carrie Fisher in the alleyway or in the underground things, like, baby, I love you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh no, you can totally see that, and of course Belushi in Animal House too. I mean, he's phenomenal. It's just unfortunate. I mean,
it would have been a different movie though, for sure.
It would have been a different movie, and I think the common sort of story is that the ghost Slimer is sort of based on Belushi.
Oh, I see.
It's like that's their sort of homage to Belushi is having Slimer and he's eating all the time. He's like Bluto in Animal House, right? He's like always eating. He's got like his mouth is full of stuff and whatever. So anyway, it didn't work out, of course, and then Bill Murray joined the project, and of course Eddie Murphy didn't get in it, and then they got Harold Ramis, and they got They got the gang. They got the other gang together.
Winston apparently had a much larger role originally, and that's why Ernie Hudson signed up. And then he said he was a little disappointed that it was cut back considerably by the time they shot. So that I'm kind of curious there where Winston would have played a bigger part. So
yeah, I mean he had a decent sized part, but yeah, he didn't. I think that as you're making a movie, you realize you sometimes figure out what the story is in a way, or maybe you're seeing the dailies, and maybe you're seeing like a cut as it goes along if the editor's keeping up, and you're saying, "Oh, this is shaping up slightly differently than I thought."
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
It's more about Venkman. I mean, also when you got Bill Murray, it's like you need to have a love story, and you need to have that whole thing. Although I'm sure John Belushi's character probably had a love story too with Dana, but I don't know. Yeah. And then it just things evolve, and also in the editing, as you're editing the movie later, it's like, oh well, the movie's more about this, and this stuff is working better.
Oh yeah, that's
who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knows? Who knows what happens in post? But I love Ernie Hudson, but that's kind of filmmaking too. I mean, if you shot that stuff, sometimes it gets cut because the movie's better or different, or it works out differently. It's not like they're trying to be jerks about it, but there's only so much time in a movie, and
sure.
you gotta, the movie evolves in the editing because what's the saying? Movies are saved in the editing. Although I don't think this had to be saved in the editing, but editing is a big deal, and we could talk about editing for a long time. But the point
George
is that,
Lucas makes his movies in the editing suite. So,
well, Marcia made.
well, yeah, Marcia did.
I don't want to. Yeah.
Speaking of editing, and
His
cuts
movie
of
suffered
movies,
a bit after Marcia was there. Well, speaking of editing, what?
I said, speaking of editing and different versions
Oh.
of movies,
Yeah, you want to talk about David Ayer's letter, or do you
we
want to talk about
should.
Scarlett?
No, let's go into David Ayer's letter.
Okay, so David Ayer did a movie called Suicide Squad
Without
as you
the
may
the.
know.
Yes.
Without the which had Will Smith and had most of the same people that's in the new Suicide Squad coming out, James Gunn's version.
Yes.
And he's always maintained there was an Ayer cut, right?
Yeah.
And that his movie was much better. The studio cut it differently, and blah 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 blah. So, which is entirely possible. I mean, you are contractually required, if you don't have final cut in the movie as the director, you're required to deliver your cut. You say, here's
Yes.
my cut.
Yes.
Here's my movie. And the studio, if you don't have final cut, can say, well, no, that's not working for us. We're gonna do some different. We're gonna make some changes. So the story is they made like 4 or 5 different versions of the movie and showed them to various people. Did some screenings or whatever, and decided on the movie they eventually released, which basically had very little input from the director, which
Yes.
unfortunately happens. You think of these directors as being, in charge of everything, but they're not. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them aren't powerful enough to get final cut and be in charge of the things. It's like, and the thing that's funny about the letter, he kind of compares it. I don't know if he does it explicitly, but he's basically talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League thing. And
Yes.
the situation's different though. Zack Snyder would have finished Justice League, right?
Yes.
If he could have. But the movie that was released was definitely not his version of the movie. I'm not defending Zack Snyder, but I'm saying, especially after watching Army of the Dead, but that's a totally different story.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder didn't have a chance to finish the movie. Someone came in and redid the movie based on his vision of the thing, Joss Whedon, and it became a totally different movie. So that maybe not justified, but understandable why he would say, well, this isn't my version of the movie.
Yes.
But we'll never know exactly how different Suicide Squad's version that was released is different from David Ayer's version. So I don't know. I understand what he's coming from, but that's kind of show business. I don't know. I'm sympathetic, but not that sympathetic.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because so they did a theatrical version, and then on home video, as kind of is the tendency nowadays, there was a longer extended cut. I don't know if they called it director's cut. I think they just call it extended cut, and he's kind of disowning both of those. But it just seems unless he's trying to build momentum again with the release of the new movie for the Ayer cut to be released and have the ability to finish that. It seems like weird timing, because at the same time he's like, yeah, the studio sucks because they took my movie away from me and made it into something that wasn't what I intended. But hey, James Gunn did a great job, so you should go see his movie. I'm like, well, that's weird, but okay. So it was kind of a weird stamp of approval for the new version by really lashing out at the studio and saying, especially his whole part at the beginning of his letter, this whole rambling thing of like, I've stepped over people brained on the street and was in a submarine where we're running out of food for 2 months. I was just like, what is all that have to do with your cut of the movie? But it was weird. I just thought
not everybody reacts to drugs the same way.
Exactly. I mean, I get what he's saying, and I understand. And
put down the pipe.
I think those of us that have worked in the movie industry know that's how it works, and knows that you don't always get your version out there. And people that aren't in the movie industry that just go to the movies probably, for the most part, don't care. So I'm just like, I don't know. And
yeah, it's like I said. I think there was definitely a feeling of sympathy. Zack Snyder was sympathetic at the time because he had to leave for personal reasons. Ayer just had to deal with the studio system. I mean, I hate to say it, it's not the same thing. It's not.
Yeah, no, it's totally not. And it's like you were. It's kind of like, and I know this is getting to sticky territory, but it's kind of like the people that are like, well, the Siegel and Schuster's family should have the copyright to Superman because they created Superman, and Jack Kirby should have the rights to all of his characters he's created. I'm like, but they were hired by a company to do work. Yes, they created those characters, but they were paid for it at the time, and they were hired. You don't see like there's a character called Angleman. You don't see the guy who created Angleman crying for copyright to that because
no, Angleman didn't make any money.
Right, exactly. So whether they should be compensated down the road for it, I think that's another argument. But whether they should have ownership of that character, I don't think holds up because they were hired to like anything, any code or anything I create at the company I work for doesn't belong to me, and it may go on to make a lot of money, and I would hope they would compensate me for it. By the way, that's not what I do. I'm just saying. But it's like, you don't. I don't think the programmers who made World of Warcraft should get ownership of that because they created. They were hired. That's what they were hired to do. They were hired to do that. They did their job. They got paid for it. Again, like I said, compensation down the road when it makes billions of dollars is another thing. But it's the same thing with this. It's like you were hired to make this movie based on characters you don't own. And yeah, it is shitty and terrible that the studio decided, no, this is the version we're going to release, but you were paid for that. And you have your cut, obviously. He's shown it to people and they think it's the best thing ever. And that's great. I'd love to see it. That would be great. And if the studio is smart, they'll go, you know what? We agree. Let's let you finish this and release it. But they aren't under any obligation to do that. So I don't know. I think kind of the line too that maybe you and I know, and a lot of people maybe don't, is show business or any kind of entertainment business is that, a business. And yeah, you get some really cool creative stuff out of it, and there are places where people can be extremely creative, but at the end of the day, it's a business. And it's all about the money.
Well, yeah.
And the people that make it and people that own it are going to try to keep as much of the money as they can. And we'll talk about how people are fighting back against that here in a few minutes. But this is my rant for the episode. I haven't done a rant in a while. I just
go off.
I think you should. I think it's abysmal that the people that have created these characters and are making billions of dollars for a lot of the times don't get the credit for it. I think they absolutely should get the credit for it, and they should get some compensation for the billions of dollars that are making. But at the end of the day, like I said, they were hired to do a job. They did it at the time. They got paid for it. If there was like something where they said, oh, I did it for the exposure and I was promised money down the road, sure, I think you have an argument there. But they didn't. They got paid their wage, and they were hired under work for hire, and they did the stuff and they went on. Now, morally, yeah, I think that's a whole other argument. And I'm with the creators on that side, absolutely. And I think there's obviously been many books written and many discussions over, how much Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created of the iconic Marvel characters, and whether, Jack Kirby was really compensated or really given the credit he deserved. And again, that's a whole different argument. But
well, compensation and credit are different things. I mean, even now, Jerry Siegel and Joel Shuster get Superman created by, just like Batman created by Gil Kane and oh my God, the other person's name totally escapes me. I'm so sorry. But do they get money every time? I don't know. And we're talking about morals versus what what's right versus what really happens.
Right.
Those aren't always the same thing, unfortunately. And this conversation wouldn't come up at all if these characters weren't making billions of dollars. Now, should somebody like Disney or somebody like Marvel or whatever give money back to the people who created this stuff? Sure, why not? Because they can spare it. It's the right thing to do, but are they required to do that? No, they're not, unfortunately. And they're not going to do the right thing necessarily, as evidenced by the fact that we're going to talk about the lawsuit in a second. But I think Ayer just wants to get the final say. And like you said, it was interesting that he said, go see James Gunn's movie. But, he also doesn't want to burn any bridges either. So he's like, I'm pissed. I want people to know that wasn't my movie necessarily what I envisioned, but I want to keep working. I don't want to be seen as totally difficult. So I'm going to say, but you should go see James Gunn movie. And maybe he's friends with James Gunn. Who knows? So he's going to have it both ways, which is fine. You know what? You had your say. You had your opinion. You set the record straight. Whatever, you vented. You got it off your chest, etc., etc. Cliche.
Right.
And now it's not going to happen. So it's time to move on and make another movie. And get to the point in your career, I guess, where you can have Final Cut, like James Gunn probably does. Maybe he doesn't, actually. I don't know. But
or maybe you should do movies that are yours and not based on something.
Well,
else.
not from existing IP. Yeah,
right.
I mean, he does that.
He does. Yeah.
He's made some really good movies.
Right.
And I don't know what happened with Suicide Squad. I didn't hate it. I thought it had some great moments.
I liked it a lot, but.
Yeah, and I would like to see his version of it, but if I don't see it, I'll be fine. And I think most people will be fine. Again, it's not the same kind of thing. It's not the same thing of poor Zack Snyder, look what happened.
Right.
Let's give the guy a chance. Plus, it was another thing where HBO and Warner Brothers, they're like, we really need stuff for our streaming service, so let's give a bunch of money to this guy to fix his, or do a cut of his thing, and we'll get a whole new thing for our service that's like 60% already shot, and so it's actually a bargain too.
And
right?
our new service, here's a good draw to it.
Right, exactly. It's a bargain. They get a whole new series or whatever for a fraction of the cost.
I can
and generate some goodwill too.
I can tell you.
Oh, look at the nice thing we're doing for Zack Snyder. We feel bad. Look at how nice we are.
But like I said, it was I can tell you it was a business decision. Did some creativity and something cool come out of it? Sure. And so, like you said, they were like, hey, listen, here's also the goodwill and stuff, and we can allow this guy to finish this thing. But the first decision was, what will this do for us as a business? Will this bring people to our new service?
Bottom line?
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's the same thing with people that are like, oh, I can't believe they have a service, and the only way you can see Star Trek now is to pay for it. Well, it wasn't free to make. It wasn't a bunch of people going, hey, I really want to make this space show. Me too. Let's go do this, right?
Let's get a barn and make a series.
Right.
No, it used to be quote unquote free because you had to watch commercials.
Right, exactly.
So that's why it was free, because the commercials were paying the bills, and so they could sell airtime for. And that would pay the money for the shows. It wasn't necessarily about the shows. The shows are just filler between the commercials.
Yes, it was someone else paying for you, or a entity paying for you to be able to watch this. It was never free. And then especially like when they're like, well, then, cable channels came along and they didn't have commercials. Right, but you had to pay to get the cable.
You're paying monthly to get. You're paying not only are you paying to get cable, but you're paying for like premium services too.
Right, so it was never free. So it's like dispel that to begin with.
Unless you want to steal it, unless you want to torrent it or whatever the kids do these days, and then it's sort of free, but you're still paying for the internet and whatever. But then you're kind of fucking over other people, I guess.
But they had to pay the crew, the cast and crew of 100 some people to make this, and they had to pay to every aspect of it. So why shouldn't you pay to watch it? I don't. It's like
right. I will. I get a lot of stuff sent to me and whatever. I get screeners, etc. But I will still pay to go. I mean, I used to. I would go pay to watch movies, and I would pay to rent stuff.
Right.
I still have no problem. Or I would buy it later. I'd buy the physical product, or I'd buy it on Apple or whatever to still own it. I'd still, because I think some of that money, based on my not in-depth knowledge, but some knowledge of how the contracts are and everything. It's like, some of the money, if you rent something, more of it goes to the writers and more of it goes to the below-the-line people, not some of the below-the-line people, but some of the people, as opposed to if you go to the box office, which is different, that mostly goes to the above-the-line, the talent, because they have like box office. Anyway, which also brings us into the Scarlett Johansson.
Yes.
So the gist of the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit is this. She is suing, her and her representatives are suing Disney because, according to her contract, Black Widow was supposed to be an exclusive theatrical release, which means, kids, that her compensation for the movie, she probably got some money up front, but it also means her compensation was tied into how much money the movie's going to make, which is a big deal usually.
Yes.
Because you think, this is going to be a blockbuster. So I'll take less money up front, like I'll only take $10 million up front, and I'll make my compensation based on the performance of the film. I mean, she's a big enough star. Who knows? Maybe she's got $1. I don't know, which means she gets money every time the movie makes $1. I don't know exactly what her deal points are, but the movie is called Black Widow, and she is Black Widow, so you would assume her deal is pretty good.
Yes.
So her people are contending that because Disney released the movie on Disney Plus, that money that was going to be potentially made by her has been, in effect, stolen because she's not getting the theatrical money that she was going to get, and instead it's on the streaming service where, for lack of a better word, she's kind of getting screwed over. So they're suing for $30 million, which is, I mean, I guess not a ton of money. It's a lot, but it's not a ton of money. But I mean, that's kind of what the damages are, I guess. So that's their contention. And so, I got to be honest, I'm kind of on her side.
I'm totally on her side in this because, I mean, the letter of the contract was it would have a theatrical release for a set period of time before it went to home release or streaming release. And they straight up didn't adhere to that. They did a day and date to both. And so, I mean, I think it's this is actually a pretty important lawsuit, and I'll be surprised if it goes to court because I don't think anyone,
they'll settle.
The studios do not want a precedent to be made, but
right.
It's still, even if it doesn't go to court, I still think it kind of sets a line in the sand and a precedent because, if anything, I hope it brings attention to the fact that creators and people that make music, movies, and things like that get very little from streaming right now. Musicians, their stuff goes on Spotify and all the services that you pay, $10-15 a month to listen to everything on there, and they get pennies, if anything, from that. And so, again, it's like you're listening to their stuff for free. Well, not free, you're paying for it, but you get to listen to it as much as you want, and they get very little compensation for that. I think this will, if anything, I hope it makes people pay attention to the contracts they're signing. I mean, 5 years ago, actually 2 years ago, probably, when the contracts were made for this movie, nobody had any clue the pandemic was going to happen and streaming was going to be the perceived, salvation of the movie companies. But that still doesn't excuse them breaking the contract.
Right. And so this probably wasn't a negotiated point at that time. It's like it made perfect sense. The contract made perfect sense for the time.
Right.
And so these were extraordinary times, and we're still kind of in them a little bit. And so the fact that they now, it's a he said, she said kind of situation where did they try to renegotiate or did they make no effort to renegotiate? Who knows? They probably felt like, we'll just see what happens because, we're just Disney, or who knows where the decision making came from.
Right.
But they obviously felt like, because Disney is nothing if not thorough, and they're nothing if not lousy with lawyers. So at some point, this conversation must have happened where someone just said, we're fine because we can do whatever we want. We own this thing.
Right.
We can release it however we want, and we're covered. And so that person's probably fired, first of all. But
probably. Yes.
Second of all, you're absolutely right. They're never going to go to court with this. It's going to get settled for an undisclosed sum. Everyone's got to sign non-disclosure agreements, etc.
Yes.
And so we'll never know probably what happens because, as you rightfully pointed out, which makes perfect sense, they don't want a precedent. They don't want a judgment against them for sure, because then everyone's going to sue. Like Emma Stone supposedly is mulling over her options for Cruella.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Whatever. So they just did poor contract negotiation, and whoever's doing that was bad. But you can't anticipate who can anticipate a Spanish Inquisition, right? I mean, no one expects that.
Right.
It's just like no one expects a pandemic. So at the time, the contract made perfect sense. So I don't blame her at all. And people are like, oh, she just rich, spoiled celebrity, blah blah blah. It's not about that.
No.
And she doesn't need the money. And I think she'd probably be the first person to go. It's not about the money.
Yes.
It's about the fact that I'm in a position where I've done 9 movies with this studio, and they're fucking me at the last minute.
Right.
And if they'll do that to me, then they'll do it to you, no problem. And so she's like, I don't know Scarlett Johansson. I only met her a couple times, but I would say that she's the kind of person where it's like I have plenty of money and fame and success. I can do this and I can go for as long as it takes.
Yes,
I don't care. I'll be the poster girl for sticking it to the man. And it's not like the first time that Disney's tried to do this. I mean, we talked about Ellen Dean Foster before too.
exactly. Yes.
You know, basically in the changeover from Fox to Disney, he's getting screwed out of his back end profits for a bunch of Star Wars novels, which, you know, you can say look at the bad corporate entity, whatever, but, you know, as you pointed out and we pointed out many times, they're not going to be. There's a difference between what's morally right and what's financially right a lot of times, and so they're going to do what's financially right for them first,
Exactly.
and then think about the moral implications later if they even come up at all. So yeah, I'll be really interested to see what happens. I hope she takes him to the cleaners. I love that saying, and just like rakes him over the coals. I'm going to try to think of some other colorful metaphors and just fucks them over.
You know, like,
and gets all of her money and gets like $100 million judgment for like being for annoyance, because this is just bullshit to try to fuck your people over.
And it's like bullshit. A blatant, breach of contract. I mean, Shang-Chi and the Spider-Man movie that are coming out this year are not listed as coming out on streaming the same. That may change depending on how things do, but it's kind of like, so you're setting a bad message that it's like, well, you know, those movies are important, so we're going to make sure they're in the theater. But this one about the woman, we're going to just make as much money as we... Well, you know, it's probably not going to do well in the movies.
No one's going to see this anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just bad messaging on Disney's part. And from reports that I'm seeing this morning, Kevin Feige is even saying that he's shocked and embarrassed at Disney's treatment of her. So,
as he should be.
Yeah.
He should be.
Well,
I would imagine that he wasn't consulted on this kind of
yeah, and I bet he's probably made some phone calls and been like, "What the fuck," you know?
The fuck, guys.
Yeah.
But you know what? Feige's not going to rock the boat too much. He's got a lot of shit riding on.
Sure, but he does have a bit of power
outraged.
at this point, right? I mean,
does he?
I think so.
I mean, I don't know what his contract says, but you know, I mean, everyone's replaceable.
True.
Everyone's replaceable.
So this kind of
Kevin Feige Jr. But the other thing I only wanted to mention was that, and I wouldn't even have been so outraged about this, because in my mind it's like, oh, a large company is trying to fuck somebody over. What a surprise! But then they attacked her personally.
Yes. Yeah, their response was to attack her.
How callous of you to sue us during a pandemic when your fucking parks are open, motherfuckers.
Right.
Disneyland is open. So you are being more callous than anybody.
Yes.
That's like, what? And they wouldn't, and I got to, and I'm not trying to make this a woke moment or a sexist moment or whatever, but they wouldn't have done that to her if it was a dude. I'm almost positive they wouldn't have attacked her personally. Maybe they would have. But it's like, Disneyland is open. Disney World is open during the pandemic.
Yep.
And you're attacking her because she's disregarding the impact of the pandemic? Fuck you.
Exactly. If this was a Thor movie, they wouldn't attack Hemsworth or Waititi.
Plus they need to keep working with Hemsworth and Taika Waititi. So this is the other thing, is this is her last movie for them.
Right.
And so they're, you know, I just think they're trying to push her around too. And you know what? She's not going to go quietly.
So here's what I'm curious about, because if everybody remembers way back last fall, the insistence on Tenet coming out in the theaters and not going straight to streaming. So here's my question. Did they have that same contract with Nolan? And he's like, no, I'm going to hold you to that. And they were like, well, it's Christopher Nolan, and we're going to do it.
Well, I think the difference is Nolan is also the producer of his movies. Right. He probably owns the movie. I mean, basically his production company.
Well, that's probably true.
I mean, I don't know his deal, but I would imagine it's different than this. She's an employee of Disney for Black Widow, because it's part of an existing contract that started from Iron Man 2.
Yeah, and I guess different studios too. It's Warner's and
and Warner's wants a relationship with Christopher Nolan for forever. But I would imagine that he said to them, "I'm going to make this movie. Would you like to pay for it? I will take it someplace else if you don't." And they're like, yes, of course, Mr. Nolan, whatever you want.
Yes.
So they're gonna bend over backwards to maintain that relationship. And he probably, I mean, it could even have been a negative pickup where he's just gonna make the movie and they're gonna buy it. I mean, I don't know. Like I said,
but still, it's like, here's the dude. And
it's a different situation.
Where it's like, yes, sure, we're not gonna breach that contract. We're gonna do what we can, and then, you know, different company obviously, but the woman, it's like, yeah, we're gonna do whatever we want because we want to make as much money as we can. So
and you know what, I'm not backtracking, but I got to say that I don't have a problem with companies making money. Because
No.
companies have to make money
Right.
to stay in
It
business.
is a
Otherwise,
business.
you're not going to get.
Yes.
You're not going to make any Black Widow movies or any other movies if you don't make money. If you go out of business, that said, you should treat people, if not fairly, at least you should honor your contract.
Yes, exactly.
You shouldn't just do whatever you want arbitrarily, because
Right.
a deal is a deal is a deal. If you want to renegotiate, renegotiate. If they don't want to renegotiate, then you can't make them renegotiate.
And hey, that movie
So-
made 60 million during the pandemic in the theater, and I think would have continued to do well if it wasn't immediately available on streaming. Much like the theater owners are like, yeah, here's why it tanked the second week, because
No, that's absolutely
know.
that's absolutely true. I think it would have made money if the situation were different. If we weren't in a pandemic and it was in the theater, it would have made huge amounts of money.
absolutely.
But maybe not. I mean, maybe, who knows? But it also would have come out last year too, and
Yes.
things would totally be different. But that's not the world we live in now, right?
Right.
So in the current world, they did what they thought was in the best interest of the company to maximize their money. Oh, well, we did it to Premiere Access, so people are still paying $30 each for it at home. Which, yeah, sure, that's true. But she doesn't get any piece of that. I
Right.
bet.
Yeah. So
And yeah, like you said, it's a larger precedent for creatives all over, writers, producers, directors. It's like streaming is a new kind of frontier, especially now. It's like a bigger deal, and it's going to become an even bigger deal for the studios going forward. So this is not only beneficial to Scarlett Johansson personally, financially and otherwise, morally, but also beneficial to the countless other creatives out there who are also going to get fucked over by Disney and are not Scarlett Johansson.
yeah,
So
and studios have always done this, and I know I'm
sure,
lumping them all in, but any new technology, I mean, back in the day, they downplayed, VHS and home video and stuff. That's
who wants to watch a movie at home?
that's a
stupid.
niche thing. You're not going to make any money off of that, so don't even worry about that. And some smart people were like, yeah, we are going to worry about that. It's the same thing with streaming and whatever else comes after that. It's like, oh yeah, that's it's going to take a while to take off, and you're not going to make any money off that. It's like, turns out, yeah, we are. So
Turns out you're going to make all your money that way.
yeah, so I think we do want a piece of that. So
Well, and and people, it's a tough position sometimes, because average Joe, or average, not you, of course, but like regular people are talking about, listening to these figures and looking at these numbers, are like, I will never make $30 million in my lifetime.
Right.
So there's some content. There's some people are like, oh, spoiled celebrities. Who cares? Blah blah blah. I care more about. I don't care as much about Scarlett Johansson. She's going to be fine.
Yeah,
Either way,
yes.
financially. I mean, I care about her. I don't want anything bad to happen to her, obviously, but she'll be fine. It's not about her. It's about some third-tier writer on a sitcom who's getting fucked over, or it's about because if shows don't get made, then the below-the-line people don't get jobs either.
Exactly.
It's about the regular workers in the entertainment industry who get compensated decently, but they're not millionaires.
yeah,
I don't know any millionaire grips. I mean,
No, not at all.
so it's like they got to work too. And so if they're constantly screwing over the big people, then they're absolutely screwing over the little guy and the smaller fish and the whatever. I'm
Well,
just full of metaphors.
That's
today,
kind of
but,
like the bands, including Marillion, yes, but the bands that I've respected through
Marillion.
this pandemic have they've done a lot of things like streaming shows and special releases, and the ones that I respect have been the ones that are like, listen, we're as the band ourselves, we're okay. We're doing a lot of this. If you wanna buy this, or if you want to tip us or whatever, do so. But all that money is going to go to our crew, our road crew, and our production crew, and people like that.
right, the people that aren't working.
Right,
yeah.
they aren't working right now, and they're having a hard time. So some of them have specifically done things and fundraisers and sold stuff specifically to pay their crew, and it's like, that's cool, because those are like you said, those are the people that everyone doesn't think about. When you see a movie, you see the director and the actors. Maybe if you know a little bit more, you see cinematography and editing, but there are a lot of other people that work on that are making they're making more than what I make in my job, but not in a consistent basis. They start towards the end of a shoot of a movie looking for the next gig, because that may not be there. So
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the life they chose, obviously.
Well,
Freelance
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
But I also think about, and I bash movie theaters sometimes, and I'm sorry for what happens during the pandemic because I love movie theaters. I like going to the movies. But those people, if movies don't get made, they don't have work either. I mean, our producer Mike works in the movie theater business, and if there's nobody going to the theaters, he doesn't have work. So it's like it affects a lot of people. It affects a lot more people than just high-paid celebrities and just big-time directors. It affects hundreds and thousands of other people's jobs too. And it affects economies of entire cities like Atlanta or Los Angeles or Vancouver or hundreds of millions of dollars gets pumped into it to economies because of filming. And if none of that happens, or if it's
theaters are a good example right there because everyone's like, oh, movie ticket prices are crazy, and then they want to charge us all this for popcorn and all that stuff. What you pay for the ticket, all of that goes strictly for them to be able to have the ability to pay the movie. That all goes back to the movie studios and them basically renting the movie. They only make money off of concessions. That's why they're high price. If you want to be able to go to the theater, then you're going to pay for that $8 popcorn and that $6.
I don't even like popcorn that much, but I will buy concessions because I know that goes to the theater. I don't even, I mean, that's why I like something like Draft House is that you go there because they care about the movies and they have a good presentation. The films are in focus and the sound's good and everything. But the food, you go to eat. I buy drinks and I buy food because that's how they make money. They don't make money necessarily on renting the movies because they have to pay a huge rental fee for those movies,
especially the blockbuster ones and stuff too. So yeah, exactly. So
anyway, I get it though. It's like, oh, it's so far removed from my life. Like I'm working a $15 an hour job,
right?
Or I'm working, $10 an hour, and I'm here Scarlett Johansson wanting $30 million for a movie she already got paid for and probably already got a lot of money for, and rich celebrities, poor boohoo.
Why can't she do it for the exposure? I'm just saying.
Why can't she just do it for the exposure? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I understand that mentality too. I get that. It's just, it's as someone who also cares about the little guy and who also cares about, the below the line people, the unsung heroes, the people who aren't visible, or women in the industry for that matter.
Right.
If we're going to go there. And so it's like, you can't treat people, if you're going to treat someone like her this way, then how are you treating the people that can't fight back? I mean, it's indicative of a larger problem that's just that permeates that industry and many industries. Let's be honest, the most, look what's happening with gaming, with Activision and Blizzard and everything. It's like, we're walking out because you guys are not handling the sexual harassment shit correctly. This is bullshit. And if any industry was right for unionization, it's fucking gaming, man. I'm telling you.
Well, I mean, restaurants and grocery stores right now, it's like we can't get people to work. It's like, because you're not paying them a living wage, and they're making enough to live on off of unemployment. And that's going to.
Well, the answer, Joe, is to cut unemployment. That's
right. I'm like,
you're paying them.
Really?
You're paying them not to work. What the fuck?
That's what the problem is. We're paying too much. Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You're not thinking like a GOP member.
Right.
You're thinking like a human, like a human being.
Yeah. So
sorry, did I just alienate some of the audience? I apologize.
I hope so. Anyway, I think a lot of industries are getting a wake up call right now, and I think it's all good. And, and I get the argument. Oh well, because of this, your favorite restaurant might go out of business. I'm like, you know what? If they're not going to pay their people to be able to afford to live, then they probably deserve to go out of business. I'm just
I mean, that's the thing. Companies, I support business. I think business is important. I think that you should run your business as best you can, but part of that is being responsible to your employees.
Yes.
And making sure that they can actually get to work and can take time off when they're sick and can, that's what part of management. That's part of being a good business person, I think.
Yes.
It's taking care of the people that take care of you because it's a partnership, right? I mean, you're the boss and you own the business, but if they can't work, then you're fucked.
Right.
Right. So help them be happy. Find the Flickcast at Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all the places that Joe says are exploiting the artist. And then find us on Twitter and Facebook and our Patreon at patreon.com/theflickcast. And Joe is at What Joe Writes, and I'm at Chris Yu. So basically, we are complaining, and we're also part of the problem.
Exactly.
So hypocrites rule, baby.
Yep.
That's the answer. Well, the thing is, there's no real other place to put podcasts. We put it at Apple, we put it at Spotify, we put it at Stitcher, we put it at Google, we put it, all the places that people can reach it. But I think the difference is we're doing this more for fun and for
Yes.
the love, and instead of for money,
Yes.
because we're not getting rich on this show, obviously. But it's just I like doing it with you. It's fun, and hopefully, people are entertained, or at least amused, or at least
Hey, I'll
distracted for a minute while they're doing something.
I'll go
else.
ahead and
When you're on the toilet listening to the podcast.
I'll go ahead and say this right now to avoid litigation in the future. Anything I've said on any of our podcasts that turns around and makes us $1 billion, I'm not going to sue for different compensation.
No, nor will I.
So there you go.
Fair enough. That's a good way to end the show. Any other final words? Or
I think I've said enough.
I think we both said enough on this one. So, all right, good. For Joe Dilworth, I'm Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thanks a lot for listening.